here today again. I'm going to by asking that we talk about the discussions or the takeaways from the last class. I didn't take that class, I missed it. So to get up for you to teach me what you learned while I was away. I'll be the first person to be in this class today, so he can start off. That's Chimeze. Chimeze, you're the first in class today. Why don't you start us off on the takeaway?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Good evening, everyone. Yes, the last class, which was about regulatory requirements and building codes. My takeaway from that class is basically that all facilities, either built or unbuilt, has to go through regulatory inspections, or possibly a regulatory code has to be assigned to, to that structure. What I mean is it is either. What I mean is that it starts from the construction stage down to the useful life cycle of the built structure, and these codes are purposeful in the aspect of the safety and the sanitary part of it. And what I mean is like the health and condition of the people working and all around the facility are also considered, the aesthetics and a whole lot are put in place. We also talked about the energy management before going into a project or getting into a facility. You must put regulations in place. That's for me. It's what I take away from the last class.
Okay, very good. There are laws, the building code is a set of laws that governs how we build and occupy spaces. That's it. All right. Yana, can you take it up from there? You're still muted. Unmute.
All right. Good evening, sir, and good evening, class. One of the things that struck me from the lesson is that when we talk about the codes and regulations, usually they are minimum standards, meaning that we should even strive for higher standards, using that as the base. And I think I can relate to this because in some cases, circumstances can change. I'll give an example. There is a breach within where we operate, and during the time when a construction of a factory is to be done, they needed to bring in heavy equipment to that bridge. So because that bridge was not constructed with so much safety in consideration, they did not provide much margin. All right, so they couldn't pass those equipment through that bridge. So they had to come back to do some kind of reinforcement, like some post-construction activities to make it suitable. But if they have factored all this during the time of designing and construction, then I'm sure we won't have to go through that. And for that period, there was heavy traffic because of all these activities. So it's good to strive for best practices, going beyond just the minimum requirements.
Super. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ibuaba, your turn.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, what Mr. Vianana what you already said, just understanding the need for basic regulations and keeping to standards, the importance of it all. So I think that was just mainly what I got from the training. Fortunately, my network was not so good that day, so I couldn't really follow very much. But hopefully, I will get better feedback from. I'll get more information when I watch the video. And so that's it.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you. All right, Moses, your turn.
All right, in the last class, because previously I've been looking at building codes to be just, I have to do with just the building fabric, the structure of the building. But I got to know that building codes exist and they cover a wide range of areas on the building that has to do with both ventilation, fire maintenance, or emergency preparedness, even the kind of toxic substances. It caters to a wide range of areas around the building. So those are one of the things I got to know from the class. And also from one of our participants, I got to know that the laws are being made by like the federal government, while each individual state government are at liberty to revise it as best as suits that particular location, and also the enforcement of those laws is domiciled with the individual state governments. Thank you very much.
Correct. That's a good one. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Take the mic, please.
Okay, sir. Good
afternoon.
Okay, my main takeaway yesterday on the last training was mainly on the importance of codes and regulation. I think the lecturer really called our attention to the importance of, looking into building code, especially for some of us engineers. It's a good wake-up call. Though the code we as we were told is still undergoing some level of review. So, because for now, most of us are used to using the BS code and the Euro code. But I felt there is need for me for us professionals, engineering professionals and architecture, to start looking deep into our code and to find a way to utilize it. However, I still have my reservations, which you may help also to clear. With regard to FM, do we have any code? Do we have any specific regulation or code with regard to facility management in Nigeria? We would like to know if there is any nationally drafted policy or code or standard with regard to facility management in Nigeria. I'll be glad to see one, if any. Thank you.
Well, the Nigerian Building Code is actually a facility management law, right? Because we talked about the FM's involvement in the building cycle, right? Everywhere from planning, design, construction, handover, testing, commissioning, and facility management is all encapsulated in what you have in the building code. If you have to build a new building, there are instructions. If the building is an old building, there are instructions. If you're going to make a change or remodeling, there are instructions. So virtually everything that has to do with the building, everything from a type of building to materials to occupancy to health and safety, which is all facility management. That's just the reality. But in terms of facility management as a profession being regulated, not a regulated industry. Like you have engineers and architects having a seal that regulates them. If they have certain misconduct, they'll lose their number. We're not there yet. It's something that the FM industry is still working on. So the National Association, the Association of Facility Management Practitioners in Nigeria, is working on getting to that point where we can now have practicing FM with an FM number. something that we can say this is a seal. All over the world, that has not been done. The reason it's not been done is most of our members, because FM is a multidisciplinary profession, most of our members come from other professional bodies into FM to practice FM. So FM is like a baby that has many mothers and fathers, right? So if regulation is already happening at the other levels, there's always that argument against regulation at the FM professional level. But that's left to be seen, because we are really pushing for some form of regulation. In fact, in 2018, we had the FM Council bill passed by the Senate. It just couldn't get concurrence on time for presidential assent before the that was 2015, before the change of government. And ever since the change of government, that effort and all the resources that went into it seem to have stopped. So yeah, we hope to get to that point. But for now, we depend on the building code, we don't know the professional codes of all the professional bodies that make up our members. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right, thanks. Emmanuel T, take it away from the last class.
Okay. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Okay, so for my take home for last class was the purpose for building code. So why do we have the building code? It's just minimum standard for safety and health. So because especially safety during construction, there must be a standard. If not, there will be a lot of injuries during any form of construction. And just stabilize design, not just any kind of design, just bring from, must follow the process. And the method of construction in which must be followed. So that was my take home for last class. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Right.
Let's hear from Toby Loba Shinuga.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everyone. My take home from the last class is the difference between the building regulation approval and planning permission. It strikes a lot and gave me the new insight into the processes involved in building codes in FM. Building regulation approval is not the same as planning permission, and the renovations do not usually require a planning permit. Meanwhile, the building regulation approval is the one which involves the building codes and the applications. Thank you very much.
Okay. When you say renovations normally require a permit, a planning permit.
Yes, may not.
Yeah, that depends on the scale and the level of changes you are making to the building. If the building is going to look different, if it's going to occupy more people, if it's going to change the purpose, if it's going to be zoned from one, maybe residential to business, for example, if it's going to require some very heavy mechanical installations like treatment, sewage plants and large plants like power generating plants, it will need planning permission for you to do major restructuring or remodeling of buildings. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if meaning
authorities.
Okay. That's if the building use is going to be changed and there are major changes that are going to go. So plan. Oh wow. Thank you very much for that.
Yes. The change is going to be extensive. We go for approval.
Wow.
All right. Thank you so much, Toby. Francis.
Good evening, sir. Hello, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you well.
Okay, sir. First off, concerning the planning permit for the renovation work, I think even in Lagos, even if you have to paint your house, I don't know if it's a sort of revenue generation for the local government. You have to get a permit even to paint the fabrics, the building fabrics. It happened to my landlord. So I was wondering why they would come and seal the house just to paint, just painting. So even when in the last class I wanted to see it.
If it's the local government that is asking for the payment, it is not a planning permit, it's another kind of levy. You know that local governments charge all kinds of development levies, right?
Yes.
So if they see you doing any development and you did not, even my own, where I stay, I did some work inside before I moved in. I didn't do any painting. I just gutted it out, did some electrical works and tiling and screening and the rest. And then they came from the local government to say there was a certain levy that we're supposed to pay. It doesn't have anything to do with planning permit or approval.
Okay, so it's not a permit, it's just a levy. So no, from the last class, we got to know that the architect is actually the head of the team for construction work. And because we believe that is the one that have the true picture of what the building should look like, both in and out. So you have to engage an architect from the beginning, even on to the commissioning stage or handover. So that now led us to a scale of fees for architect, because I was asking the facilitator that, how would you know that the architect is not overcharging you? And he now came up and said there is a scale of fee for all of the engineers on the site. It's just that we don't normally practice it. You know, Nigerians, we all believe that once you give me price for something, there must be an addition. You must be able to give me a discount. So that now came up and he enlightened us on how you can get a scale of fees for all your engineers. Then the architects, if you really want the building to be safe for the occupant, you have to involve the architect from the beginning to the end of the project, so that all building codes and regulatory permits must be gotten the right way. That's my takeaway.
All right, thank you so much. That's very good, Francis. Chris.
Yes.
Chris, yeah.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, my take home is outside every other thing, it's about the building code and regulation and the areas of defect liability. So many contractors, building owners have no knowledge about this. But henceforth, as an FM, we had to get them to get to know that they have the right, that a contractor or a builder cannot just collect money, come do nonsense and pay you. With the FM knowledge and this introduction, it will help us to guide our clients, our supervisors, our boss on the needs and the requirement to include it in their contract if it is not there. Because I manage
Precisely there.
Some facilities and call the contractor, you say, and the defect liability. It has given us more insight on the importance of it included in the contract. That's part of my take home.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Kingsley, please go ahead. Is Kingsley there?
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sorry, I was not in the last class. I was not in the last class. I missed the last class.
And did you read the material?
Yes, I was able to go through the last video because I called the Barakat, and she made me understand that this particular one has not been compiled yet. I have to go through the last video to see.
Okay. Well, no problem. Let me now give the mic to Victor. Victor Sagi, please go ahead with the takeaway.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
My major takeaway has already been said, but I'll just put a little light on it. Was on defect liability period.
Okay.
The defect liability period is a set time, according to what the lecturer told us. in a construction project. Oh, sorry, let me start again. Is a set time after a construction project has been completed, during which a contractor has the right to return to the site to remedy defects. Like when he was talking about this defect, I actually paid more attention to this particular one because like that, after a construction period, we normally have some defects. It might be due to while planning. And this also takes me to my second takeaway, which is under energy efficiency in the building code, which said improvement of building efficiency at the planning stage is quite simple and cost effective. So if during that period the planning was well done, I didn't say there won't be some defects, but it will help them manage the defects. And in the contractor side, he doesn't want a situation whereby he has to pay, because for a defect liability period, you have to put it in the contract for the contractor to be able to do the defect liability. So if it's in the contract, then the contractor doesn't want a case where when they call on him, he has to pay another contractor to do the liability, the defect liability for him. So he wants to do it himself. It helps him save costs. And also in the employers too, he also wants to save costs as well. So that was my takeaway for the last class. Thank you, sir.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Thank you. All right. So let me hear from Toasting. What they doing? Toasting, if you can speak, go ahead. All right, Daniel.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Well, basically, for me, I just took that class to be a knowledge class for all of us, to actually know all that has to do with building codes and regulations in construction, because well, for the purpose of just taking a point, I realized there was something that one of our class members, who happens to be working with IS, the International Standards Organization, there was some points he made where she said that though the national body may organize this, may edit these building codes, but it was actually the responsibility of the states and the various agencies to actually regulate and make sure that they regulated the rules and laws. But beyond that, for me, the whole thing for me just panned out in this way that, yes, we have these codes, but it's very, very disheartening to understand that for all these years, since 2006, we really don't have any national code in the country. It's still been under editing, and all of us are just picking codes from Europe, from America, from anywhere just to build. And it will be interesting to know that for all this while that I've been into this real estate, I've hardly seen at any point where the supposed regulators do follow routinely from design, pre-design to design and to construction to actually understand if we are conforming to these codes. And now you see that they bring back the responsibility to facility managers, such that by the time you talk of a project, it is now for you to now start following all these codes. You begin to check where they have erred, maybe in safety, in public health, in mechanical. It is now for the FM now who begins to look at if he knows the codes. So I think there is room for a lot of improvement. We have to be able to. There has to be, first of all, like the teacher said, there has to be an intentional purpose of teaching these rules from schools, so that engineering students and environmental students are able to grasp these things, so that when you get into the field, you're able to push through and make sure that you imbibe the culture of using rules and regulations and codes in buildings. By so this culture of maintenance and adherence to rules and codes will stick by us. But as it is right now, it's just an all-comers effect. So we are only learning these codes in Nigeria and applying just for knowledge purposes. But in practical terms, we are not yet there.
Okay, thanks for those opinions. Very good. Anthony Alaba, go ahead. Anthony, are you there? All right, gifts. Okay, boy. Gift is not able to speak. You can unmute if you want to speak. Yusuf Rasak. Are you there? Okay, so what I've done is to take those of you in the current class as much as possible. I know I missed out a few people like Tom and others that came in late into the class. I'm going to ask now to see if we have any problems, issues for us to resolve. It's a problem solving session now in the next few minutes. Any questions, general questions, FM career, operations strategy from anybody?
Hello, sir.
Issues you're facing right now?
Hello, sir.
Daniel, okay.
Yes, sir. Please, my own issues will actually be with, there are some topics you treated in your last subject you taught us on metrics and measuring tools, quality measurement tools.
Yes. Quality improvement, yes.
Yes, yeah. There was some concepts you talked about which I couldn't actually grasp properly. And this way, if you could actually just run through them briefly, things like, I wanted to understand what you meant by cost per square feet, cost per labor hour, supply cost per square feet, and things like that. And then if it's possible to, if you could just go through those tools, some of those tools you talked about, the Pareto, scatter diagram, and control chart. I mean, something like that. If we just do us a little brief on that. So let me just pick up what your thoughts on those things so that it can be clear in my head, actually. So,
you are almost asking for half of that class to be revised, but I can tell you this. How do you compare facility manager A versus facility manager B? How do you compare building A versus building B? That's what metrics does. Metrics helps you create ratios that you can use for comparison. So you can define metrics as ratios, relevant ratios that can be used for comparison. If you say, I spend $1 million in my cleaning operations, and I say I spend 10 million naira in my own cleaning operations, right? There will be two different cleaning operations spending 1 million versus 10 million. How do you tell that B, which is spending 10 million, is actually spending more? If I look at 1 million versus 10 million, it will be almost, oh, this is more than this, right? What if I know that the one spending 1 million is only a room and parlor space? The one spending 10 million is covering a 40,000 square meter mall. That will get me thinking, and I ask myself, okay, so this guy spending 10 million might actually be spending less. Based on what? If I can identify the cost drivers for cleaning, I can create ratios that I can use to compare facility A versus facility B, FMA versus FMB. Those are what metrics does. So when I say cost per square feet or square meter, I'm saying, what does it cost to provide a square meter of space on the average, right? That is a metric that you can use to compare the square meter in Abule Egba versus the square meter in Koyi. If there is nothing like metrics, you really cannot measure. And if you cannot measure, you cannot improve. So the foundation, the basis of all improvements, quality improvement, is metrics, facility management metrics. And so there is those metrics. I give you a series of examples in slides on that material. You can create a lot more metrics for yourself. I see an FM saying, oh, our power consumption is very high. Why? I use diesel to generate. Okay, is that why it's very high? Oh yes, we spend a lot of money buying diesel. But I want to know how much per kilowatt hour does your entire generation cost come to? So you have to know how much is the generator itself, amortization of the equipment, how much is the diesel that goes in, how much is the maintenance, right? It is based on those. I will now also need to know the total kilowatt hours the gen is producing over a period. I will use those amounts of inputs, which is maintenance, equipment, and diesel costs, to divide outputs, which is my total kilowatt hours produced, to arrive at the metric of cost per kilowatt hour. So if somebody says public supply is more expensive than generator delivery, or generating power from gas is more expensive than buying from the eco disco, can you tell, how do you compare these two to say this is actually more expensive than the other? Instead of going into, oh, we spend 1 million on diesel, we spend 500,000 on generator maintenance, and no. You need to have passed that data, analyze those data to come up with generator, we spend 60 naira per kilowatt hour. But with public supply, we pay 48 naira per kilowatt hour. I cannot compare these two numbers. So metrics are the ratios that you generate to create, to go to do comparison of all kinds of things you want to measure and account for. So Daniel, what you see on the list in that material is just a sample, a set of sample metrics. You can generate metrics from anything from, for example, your space utilization. Have you guys done space management? Have you done space management?
Yes.
I think we do. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. If you are in that space management, you will see a metric, space utilization, right? Which tries to account for how long a space is being used. So if I have a room that I come into it every only once in a week for 2 hours, my space utilization is 2 hours divided by 40 hours for that week. I get a ratio that I can use to tell myself, am I actually using that space adequately or not? Am I getting value from the investment in that space? Same thing for cost per square meter, cost per liter of water, cost per kilowatt hour, cost per person served, cost per work order, cost per everything you want to do, use metrics. It's through metrics you can tell yourself what your baseline is. And if you are improving, that improvement is also being measured and tracked and trended using metrics. So Daniel, is that okay?
Yes, I'm okay. I'm okay.
All right, good. I'm going to share my screen and then take a 5-minute break and come back into today's lesson, sustainability and energy management, okay?
Are you talking, sir?
No, he's on a break. We're taking a break, 5-minute break, so he'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, dear. Thanks.
Starting with the basic definition of sustainability. Ability to meet the need of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That is the definition of sustainability. This was a definition by the Brundtland Commission of the United Nations in 1986. And no one else has come up with any better definition for sustainability. How do we live in such a way that we have resources and those resources can be replicated to have reserves for future generations? Thinking about the definition alone, it helps you to think, should I squander and consume and waste and pollute because I can afford it? Sustainability now becomes the tool for individuals, companies, government, world agencies to look at the bigger picture. It's a very strategic approach to management. If you forgo or ignore sustainability, there will be a lot of things you can do that will really not matter the outcome. But thinking about sustainability, you're thinking about what the outcome is and what the implications will be for the future, for every decision that you make. Okay? We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. That's the thinking behind sustainability. We consume today what we should not think we inherited or own, but what we owe to the future. In essence, we should use it in such a way that the future that owns it can still find it to use. So we ask ourselves if we are economically profitable. Because if you're wasteful or not making profits or not growing, you are not being sustainable. Environmentally responsible. The impacts of my activities on the environment, does this show a sense of responsibility? Everything humans do to the environment is destructive. Everything from cutting down that tree to digging that foundation into the ground and burying all kinds of materials in and you know, breaking up mountains to create rocks and stones and blocks to build these structures and dislocating all of those animals and creating new environments are all destructive to the earth. But they are profitable ventures to us as humans, which means they are economically profitable. And we create a balance between what is economically profitable and what is sustaining to the environment. In essence, compensate the environment for the damage our development, which is giving us economic, benefits, is doing to the environment. And then think about the impacts on people. Are people healthy around the spaces that we produce? Are we harming the health and life and well-being, safety, security of humans because of our facility operations? Those are questions that when you start talking about sustainability, you are getting deeper into consideration of things that are higher level, bigger picture. So you're no longer trying to use shortcut mechanisms to solve problems or to get the resources you need or to take advantage of an opportunity. No, you're now thinking more of the long-term, higher level, bigger picture. Planning is the key to a successful sustainable initiative. Sustainable facility management is the process of integrating the people, place, and business in a way that optimizes economic, environmental, and social benefits of sustainability. It has to be a balancing act. I want to make profits. I want to minimize my impact on the environment. I want to not hurt or harm people. Now, I have to keep doing this feasibility to ensure that I can achieve each of these three goals without hurting one or the other. Okay, so it's very important that we just understand, and then the breakdown on how it affects facility management is the what IFMA calls the 8 major categories of sustainability. There are 8 of them. We'll talk about all 8 of them, and we'll spend the other half of the class on one of them, energy, because it is the most important. In all 8 major categories of sustainability for facility managers, we take resources from the earth to meet our own needs. So we consume, and then we have leftovers, things to be discarded. What do we do with them? We take them back into the earth to punish the earth. So we extract the good and we dump back the bad. So the earth loses, on one hand, things go so fast that you cannot replenish it in the same kind of speed of depletion for future generations to have access to it. And yet, the capacity or capability of the earth to regenerate and reproduce those resources we are tapping so fast is now further impaired by the waste site impact. So that's how the 8 categories of sustainability is looked at. Energy. We use a lot of energy. In fact, with facilities or buildings in general, 40% of energy consumption globally goes into the built environment. And that is directly at the doorsteps of facility managers. How much of that energy is being used to meet the exact need that we require? How much of that energy is actually going to waste? How much of that energy is coming from sources that cannot be easily replenished? Those are the questions we have to ask and find answers to when considering the first category of sustainability for facility managers. Energy. We're using a lot more fossil fuel compared to renewable fuels, for example. Is it possible for us to find economic ways or approaches to using more renewables instead of fossil? What about water? We use water for all kinds of things, for washing, for drinking, for irrigation, sanitization, all of those things we do with water. We often take water for granted. I think managers should just, spend so much money treating water and pour the water on the ground, watering grass. Who told you that the grass that you want to water require more chlorine in the water for you to be able to irrigate, right? Or you spend so much money trying to purify water to WHO standards, only for you to use it to flush toilets and then buy bottled waters and dispenser water that you don't even know how they were cleaned, what processes they went through. Those are the kind of things we talk about. Water does not just come to meet us. We actually spend a considerable amount of energy, whether it's water we drill into the ground to get and use a pump to pump it up, it requires energy. Even if it is the one that we get from the public works, where all your area is piped and water runs into your area, you pay for it because there is a lot of energy that goes into it. Power goes into acquiring the water, whether from on the ground aquifer, from a stream or from a spring or whatever the source is, protecting and then moving the water, transporting it to where it is going to be needed. We need to be able to connect the value of water to what goes into it. Somebody did an analysis at some time a few years ago and came out with this startling statistic that if you leave a tap running, a normal 3/4 inch tap running for 5 minutes, you have lost enough resources to compare to leaving a 60-watt light bulb, incandescent light bulb, on for 14 hours. Many of us found out hard to believe. But if you live in areas where getting water is difficult, where after you've gotten the water is terrible, or you have to spend so much more in terms of processing costs before you get a liter of clean water, I'm sure you can relate with me. All right, I see a couple of hands up. Michael.
Yes, Mr. Paul, I am sorry for cutting you, but the line is really terrible. It's going up and up. Sometimes it freezes. I'm not sure if it affects others. Please, we need to know. But it's not flowing. Oh, okay.
Voice is breaking. It's affecting me as well.
This is experience, everybody.
Yes, yes. Yes, that's my experience.
Yes, it's everywhere.
All right, see. Okay, what I'll do is I'll do to put up my video and see how it will improve on the network I have. 1 second, let me just see something. Why am I not seeing this other alternative? I have an MTN modem here and I have the Swift modem. They're both supposed to be available to me. Okay, so that's the first thing I've just done. Is my audio coming out good now?
Yes, it's better. Can continue.
It's better, right? Okay, so I've just switched from Swift to MTN. Let me see how long this will. If it did crash it again, just raise your hand again like you did before, so I can put up my video. Okay.
It's still not very clear, even with that too. Not too
Still
very
not
clear.
very.
Yeah.
Still not very clear. Okay, let's try this. Yeah. Okay, how about now? Is the audio better now?
Yes, better.
It's much better from this end.
Okay,
for now.
Good.
Better than the previous.
So one thing you'll find about our networks is that you may think you have many alternatives, but they're all buying their bandwidth from the same source, right? So you might just be switching from one weak network to another network. But if you try this approach of switching off video, then all of that network concentrated on audio. You can get a lot more from that. So I think with all this said, it's obvious the audio is better now, right?
Yes, it's better now.
But it's not really, it's not very good in, from my own end yet, actually.
I guess
it's better, but it's not like
it's still breaking.
Classes.
Yes, it's still breaking.
Clearly.
It happened the other time when the other lecturer did, but he just took a little break and changed the, I don't know what he did, but he came back sounding better. So I don't know that you should do that magic, Mr. Paul.
All right, let's just take it 1 minute. I'll try it. I have now switched my networks and my video is still off. Is my audio any better at all?
Yeah, it's better.
Better.
From this end, it's better.
Yes, it is better. It is better.
It's better.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. All right. So I just talked about water. I think that's the point that we put in quite very well. Do not assume that it is water. We can always get water by drilling into the ground, and as such, it's not a big deal. Water, one, is a finite resource, which means it is not inexhaustible in our environment. There are areas in the world today that goes through seasonal droughts, seasons where you can't find water. There are areas that used to have water, but no longer have water. Many of us are busy drilling and drilling to get water today. We don't know what the implication of our squandering of water resources will have on tomorrow's generation, and that's why we need to be careful. Besides, water production, water distribution, water use, all draw from our energy resources again. So every liter of water costs you energy to produce and use. all intelligent water use and sensible consumption is what we're advocating here in this class. We use a lot of materials to do our work. Everything from cleaning to fumigation to just name, chemicals and building materials. They all go into the work that we do. If we use materials excessively, we will not be sustainable. The only my line is breaking out somebody else. Is that the same talk? It's not clear, right?
Sir, your line is breaking up, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is not for me. This is not happening. Okay, let me go the materials and resources line item again. We need a lot of materials, solid, liquid, gas, bulk. We stock these materials from the earth, and will give us a lot of disuse or overused leftovers from these materials. So these managers, we need to, as much as possible, reduce our footprint in how much materials we use everything. The bottom line in all this is cut out waste, cut out irrelevant items. As much as possible, learn to do what I term value stream mapping. All the things you do, all the processes and all the activities that go into it, what provides you?
Sir, your network is not that clear, sir.
Are you sure this is today? Okay, let's take a 5 minute break. Let me see if I can find a way of okay. Okay, I think I have had to reboot the I've had to reboot the modems to connect better.
So far, so good, sir.
Is my audio still breaking?
No, it's better. It's clearer now.
Emmanuel, how's my audio now?
Okay now.
Yeah.
It's okay now, sir.
Glad hears me okay.
It's okay. I can hear better now, sir.
No, using airport is not bad, but I'm missing to work.
Okay, let's just do a quick check and see if this is going to work.
Yes, sir, it's okay. We can hear you clearly now.
The audio is better now, right? Okay.
Yes, sir, it's better.
I can also hear you clearly.
Okay, great, great. I rebooted one of the modems, and on the other one that is a my file, I took it closer to a window. Hopefully it will get better signal. Okay, sorry about that disruption. I'm just going to share my screen and then we can continue with our class. Okay, and then on the fourth item, workplace management. We develop work processes. We hold meetings, for example, we deploy software, we use paper upon paper. We have different processes we have in place. The evaluation of all of our work processes for their environmental impacts is what this particular category is talking about. And you have indoor environment quality, right? How good is the environment within the spaces you manage? How healthy are the indoor environments? Healthy indoor environment has to do with oxygen level. Is it high enough? Is the place refreshed enough? Or are you having a lot of carbon in the air, in the spaces you manage? People are not going to be healthy in such environments. Okay, and then you have the issue of pollutants in your built spaces. Many of us don't realize that when we acquire and install assets or equipment, we bring in a lot of factory pollutants into our spaces. For example, carpets, which should be aired for days or even weeks before they are brought into the spaces, are used like that. Many of us will buy brand new equipment and start enjoying the tear rubber smell, right? Those are all pollutants. And many times it is from the work that we do. Our cleaning chemicals, our glues, our paint, our fumigation chemicals, all help to destroy the indoor environment. I was in a hotel recently and I called to say I smelled something. I think there must be maybe a dead cockroach or something under the bed. So I needed somebody to come and take the bed down and clean under again. Maybe there must be something that's causing that smell. And what they did was to come in there, tell me to wait in the reception downstairs. They're going to take care of it. And what they simply did was to puff air freshener. By the time I came back into the room, I couldn't stay in the room because that for me was more pollution, worse than the smell, which was organic that I smelled, that I wanted them to fish out and clean off. So your indoor environment is a big, big, big aspect of sustainability. Because if people begin to get sick, there is economic losses from lost time from work, there's poor productivity, there is a perception that that's not a healthy environment for people. And that will impact the way your organization is perceived, whether public or private institution, it doesn't matter. Indoor environment has a way of attributing quality to the environment and quality to the organization and quality to your outputs. And therefore, you can use indoor environment quality to attract a premium position for your organization in the industry that you serve. And then quality of services, services that are sustainable and minimize their environmental impact or environmental footprints. Waste, we have all those liquid waste, all of those solid waste that we need to process. Can we reduce how much waste we have to process? And when we have those waste, what kind of processing do we embark upon before we release them right back into the environment? How safe is our waste disposal or waste management mechanisms? What about site impacts? How do we gauge the environmental impact and footprint of each building's operational process? Every time you dig into the ground to put in a foundation and raise all kinds of buildings and spaces in there, you are disrupting the natural environment. If I can gauge how much disruption, how much destruction I'm creating for the environment, I can begin to tell myself, how can I compensate? Can I create some kind of artificial pond where some of these animals can stay, like birds can hang around? Can I plant some trees and shrubbery and other things that can mimic the nature of this environment that I came to dislocate with my development and so on and so forth? I'm not only giving myself a more helpful environment by thinking like this, I'm also reducing my impact on the environment generally. Okay. 90% of people will work indoors, and indoor air quality can be 2 to 5 times worse than outdoor. Okay. And there's an estimation by the WHO that 30% of buildings have indoor air quality issues. You know, the thing about indoor air quality is that you may not know you are having that problem. You will just continue and you get adjusted to it, and you won't even link it to the illnesses that you experience over time. Because as far as you're concerned, it's nothing. You don't feel it, you don't see it. So to put all of this in a nutshell, think of it as the inputs, processes, and outputs of facility management. Sustainability inputs include energy, water, materials, and resources. The processes, of course, this is what we get out of it. This is what we use. The workplace management, indoor environment quality, and quality of services. And the outputs, waste in terms of refuse, in terms of sewage and site impacts, you know, regarding the kind of operations and the structures we put in place to displace the natural environment. So for an organization to say I am sustainable, don't get overly fixated on the environmental impact and make sure that everything reduces the environmental impact and so on and so forth. You cannot begin to make losses and lose money and say it is because of environmental consideration. No, that in itself is a problem, right? Because you are now wasting, and anytime you are wasting, you are not being sustainable. Okay, so you cannot go and say we are
I'm
economic fraud. Okay. So sustainability is the meeting point of impacts on the environment, impacts on social, which is impact on people, and impact on economics or profit. And that's why some organizations will call this the triple bottom line of people, which is the social, planet, which is the environment, and profit, which is economic. You must have a balanced way of looking at each of these three bottom lines to be able to come up with sustainability. And this consideration affects every decision. It's not like, oh, as an organization, I think we are sustainable, we are this, we are that. No, no. For every decision we take, for every action we deploy, for every process we deploy, for every new developments, we have to ask ourselves for each item, how is it going to affect people, social? How is it going to affect the environment? How is it going to affect our bottom line, our profits? If you are doing this consideration, you may not just be a consideration that you are trying to compare all three at the same time. Sometimes you are looking at impact on profits. We're going to save a lot if we change to LEDs. Our energy consumption will drop drastically, and we're going to save X amount of money. Super. But how is this LED deployment going to affect the eyes of people? Are people going to feel comfortable with the amount of lights and the type of lights that they're not going to be providing using this LED? You have to just ask that question and say, okay, so how is it going to affect people? Is this an ambient lighting? Is this a task lighting? How many lumens, how much light intensity do people need to be comfortable for ambient lighting and for task lighting? By asking that question, I'm asking, is this equitable? The same way when you decide to invest in some sustainability initiative that blesses or helps people to feel better or be more productive, is it going to affect our bottom line, economic bottom line, so drastically that we'll begin to make a loss? That is equitability analysis. And then for the same consideration, for the same item, you're going to ask yourself how the environment is going to be impacted. Of course, for the light bulb situation, going LED is a good thing. It means that I'm going to use less energy. And if using less energy means reducing my carbon footprint and my impact on the environment, then yes, that means it's viable. It makes me money, and it also reduces the impact on the environment. And then ask yourself, is it bearable? Analyzing between environment and social. If there's an initiative you are bringing on board that is going to have a very positive impact on the environment, what is going to be the environment on people? For example, we are going to stop using air conditioning and go to fans because it will help us reduce our carbon footprint and our impact on the environment and so on and so forth. How comfortable is fan compared to air conditioning for people? Is it bearable? If it's bearable, it means that we can actually do without the AC. We don't like it in the first place. Let's continue our work without it. Make sure there's enough openings and the fans can circulate well, and there are shades to make sure the air that is being circulated is cool enough. Oh, why not? Those are the kind of things we're talking about when we are looking at these sustainability analysis. I spend a lot of time on this because We all need to be able to use the right terminology when discussing this with management. When trying to come up with initiatives, we cannot be naive or be unable to talk about things that management understand, because these equitable, bearable, viable considerations for the triple bottom line are things that management understand very well. It helps us to elevate our profession to that strategic enabler position that we've always claimed. If the social benefits outweigh the cost of the initiatives, is it equitable? Can the solution be implemented? Will the benefits likely be realized outweigh the cost to implement it? Is it viable? Is this initiative that's producing a positive effect from the environmental standpoint having a negative impact on occupant productivity? Is this bearable? This is a balancing act that needs to be done on an ongoing basis before you can now say, oh yes, we are operating sustainably. So let's look at the FM's impact on the various bottom lines. Take your social impact, how the FM facility impacts employees, suppliers, and the community at large. Are we involved with our communities? Are we concerned about occupant well-being? Is our environment healthy? Do we have safety built into our environment, or everyone working after himself? Environmental. The organization's ability to avoid harming the environment and preserve scarce resources for future generations. Reducing environmental footprint for the manager should start with energy. Reducing waste. Recycling and reusing materials, items as much as possible. Decreasing the emissions footprint. This has to do with how much fuel is burnt to produce the things you actually use. If you acquire a certain item all the way from China, for example, think about how much fuel was used to ferry it all the way to you. Those are part of the carbon footprint. In addition to how much energy went into its production. And then hazardous materials that pollute our environments and pollute our indoor spaces. Caustic materials that harms the health of occupants in our buildings. These are all considerations on the environmental front. Economic measures. The value created by the organization after deducting the cost of all inputs. Operating costs. Lowering operating costs, increasing asset value and improving return on investment, and having higher efficiency, which means doing things cheaper and cheaper and doing things faster and faster. And then being able to project for long-term savings as ways to imbibe and deploy sustainability as a facility manager on the economic front. Not all organizations are at the same level when it comes to sustainability. You need to check the pulse of your organization, because you might well be speaking jargons when talking about sustainability. How does sustainability fit within your organization's mission, values, and corporate objectives? All of the things being put forward by management. Can you come up with initiatives that will support those strategic objectives? There are some organizations that are way up on that ladder of sustainability. They already have policies, procedures, processes that govern all procurement, FM, activities, project execution. For such an organization, you think sustainability as a way of life. So some may meet all of those written down, carefully articulated, but it's just lip service. So where do you start from as an FM? You think sustainability, and you think about what your senior management will like when you bring about sustainability as a part of initiatives of improvement. What and who can you reach out to at the top to discuss some of these initiatives? That's the starting point. Because you need some buy-in from management. And then you might end up being appointed as a sustainability champion. Oh, we want you to help us drive this reduction, drive this change in this area and that area. Then super, you just get yourself an appointment, right? Which aligns with your job because you are at the forefront of it. Or you could approach it as an insurgent. What do insurgents do? They start at their own level, look for one or two persons to form an informal committee. Most of the time ad hoc, in the sense that it's not a standing committee, where they can have informal meetings to chat and discuss about concepts around sustainability. And before long, that can become a springboard for creating what I would call initial plans for implementing sustainability. Implementation should start from the low-hanging fruit. Things that you will not spend any extra money, any more organizational resources, no staff assigned to it, not because you talked about sustainability, you just changed something. Little impact on all other things, and you got huge results. So, starting with low-hanging fruits does not mean that you will not understand where you are right now. It's important that as facility managers, you have some way of measuring your operations under those 8 sustainability categories. How much energy am I consuming in total? How much of this energy is being consumed by this function, that function, that function, that equipment? And some metrics. How much per square meter? How much per person? How much, of this and that? You create metrics around them. Developing baselines also means that you have a data capturing mechanism. You have a way to meter, log in data on what's being used at different levels. That's the baseline. Even if you say, oh, well, we're going to start with something very simple, everybody can relate to this. Let's start doing recycling. Let's start separating and segregating our waste from source. You want to buy extra beans? No problem. You need to know how many kilograms of waste you actually give out. So you can have that as a tool for planning and saying, this is how our program is going to go. We will use so and so amount for beans. Our waste to be generated is going to be so much, and this is how we're going to go with it, because you actually have a means. You know those hanging scale where someone they kind of put it on the bag or lift up something and hang it up there, and it gives you the weight of what you're giving out. If you can start from there, it gives you an idea of how much waste that you are giving out. So when you start recycling, you know your total waste, even if you don't know the exact volume of different types of waste. What about water? How much water do you consume? How much of it goes to this and goes to that? Having meters here and there inside your piping system will give you those data. Electricity, metering at multiple levels, even up to the circuit level, so you can get a data on your energy use profile for every space, every equipment, every user, for example, can give you insights to start sustainability. So that's the baseline. Before you start thinking of technologies to deploy, controls and automations and all that, all of those investments can come in later because you now understand how your facility is providing, impacting the environment at the base level. So what I've just explained, get buy-in from senior management, and then decide which strategy will work best for you, whether you're trying to move in on your own as an insurgent or get senior management to basically appoint you into such a position. But again, sustainability cannot be done as a one-man's effort. It has to be done as a collective effort. So there must be people with you that you can work with. Otherwise, definitely you will not be able to hit the ground running. With the team, vision, set some objectives, and get people to begin to get excited, motivated about sustainability. And then develop a hierarchy, a set of short-term, mid-term, long-term initiatives, ranking them in such a way that if we do this once, we can show some impact and results. We can progress to the next level and show some impact and results, and so on and so forth. We can begin to get more buying, more investments into what we are doing. Celebrate victories along the way. It's not that you have to wait until you achieve everything before you now realize that you've done sustainability, you've implemented any. You just have to ensure that you enjoy the ride and take it one step at a time. All right, so I said the other half of the class is going to focus on energy because energy is 1/8, but more than 90% of our sustainability issues. We talk about water and we see energy coming up again. We talk about indoor environmental quality, energy comes up again. How much light, how much cooling, for example, on water that we have in the environment. So energy is a key input into facility management. For many of us, if you've done an analysis of your operations cost, you probably are running somewhere between 40 and 60% at energy costs alone, excluding salaries. If you add salaries, you probably will be somewhere around energy cost of 40% or 30%. It is so substantial that you can't ignore it. You have to focus on energy as your #1 sustainability effort. And understanding of the sources of energy is basic. It's a background to sustainability. What are fossil fuels? Fossil fuels are fuels that we get from the earth that took thousands of years to aggregate and be produced through natural processes in the earth. And what do? We assess them, we drill, cut them out, burn them, and then the earth cannot regenerate them as quickly as we use them up. For example, take crude oil, for example. We use up more than half the world's resources of crude in less than 100 years, something that took the earth tens of thousands of years to provide or to produce down there under the earth. In the next 300 to 500 years, will there still be crude oil to refine and consume? Coal, for example, used to be a mainstay in most economies. People were digging into the ground, extracting all this coal and burning them for energy, creating all kinds of vacuums in the earth that leads to seismic events like earthquakes and a lot of the environmental disasters that we encounter as a direct effect or result of our consumption of fossil fuels. How does this show up in our current energy mix? As facility managers, most of the time you ask yourself, I need to generate electricity by myself, you're often going to look at fossil fuel. Gas, those generators, petrol. But then there are renewable sources. These fuels can be regenerated. You make little impact on the environment by using them. Everything from organic fuels that is gotten from sugarcane, vegetable oil, and all the other things that we can grow in 1 year and have it back. For example, you could use up a whole sugarcane field to generate electricity from methane fuel. And in 6 months' time, you've grown all of that again. That's the difference. That's why it's part of what we call renewables, right? The sun, solar, is so abundant that no matter how much you extract out of it, it will still be abundant. Future generations will always have it to tap into. How much of it are we using in our operations? Of course, there are, like I said, the triple bottom line, there are considerations for some of these renewable sources being expensive, right? Well, think about Nigeria as a country. In the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, we depended mostly on renewable source of energy from the hydro power dams, hydro dam power generating systems. These were renewable. Imagine the entire country being fed and 10 other countries in West Africa also being fed from these renewable. By now, we would have been able to count ourselves as a very sustainable country when it comes to power. Our reality today is that we are generating about 18 times what the public grid provides from alternative sources. Out of that 18 times, not up to 1 or 2 is from renewable sources. All others are from fossil fuels. And that's the biggest impact that we as facility managers are having on the environment today. Nuclear fuels are very sophisticated processes that we may not be able to experience. Very few countries have the right technology to be able to harness nuclear fuels. But the bottom line in those use of nuclear fuels is the risk, the hazards that it portends. It can generate perpetually, but if anything goes wrong, the damage can undo all the good from that fuel source. So our focus is balancing between fossil fuels and renewable fuels until a time where we can now say we depend more on renewable fuels. Imagine if your facility runs on public supply and solar only. When public supply is gone, you have solar panels and inverters. Of course, batteries are also there. They also have them as a contribution because of storage. But if you can do without them and have the solar and public supplies, all that you're getting, you can call yourself a 100% sustainable organization when it comes to energy. So sustainability is the first angle. The other one is managing energy to improve performance. Ideally, if you use up more energy, it's supposed to be because you are producing more, right? So that's the ideal situation. If I have a school of 10 classrooms, and then I now needed to increase to 30 classrooms because I needed to accommodate more students coming into my school to take up positions, to take up education. What am I doing? I'm definitely going to use up a lot more energy to cater for all these more spaces and more people that I need to provide education for. Now, by doing that, I would say I'm making progress. Now, but just from going from low energy consumption to high energy consumption does not tell me whether I'm sustainable. I could be low energy consuming and be unsustainable. My energy mix and the amount of energy that is still being wasted could be happening when my energy consumption is low. So energy performance is looking at the metrics of energy. What is supposed to be the driver of energy cost or energy volume or energy quantity, for example? More people, more students, more energy, right? Now, because that's the driver, I need to know how much energy per student I'm currently consuming, so that I can keep increasing my energy consumption, increasing my students, but focusing on reducing my energy per student. If you ask me, do I need 200 more students or 2,000 more students, I'll say yes. Produce more spaces for them, yes, I need more. But in doing that, I don't necessarily need to have an increasing metric of energy consumption per student. This is energy performance. You can continue to improve your energy performance as you increase energy consumption. Improved energy performance can be measured in terms of cost, absolute use, or with various energy use ratios, such as kilowatt hours per additional units. So metrics is the only thing that I need to focus on to say I am improving or I am not the total. Total should go up. What are some of my goals? Use less driver, use more energy derived from renewable sources, use energy in a more socially and environmentally sustainable manner. Understand how energy when you acquire a facility to run and they bring you a bill, do you understand how that bill is calculated? I've seen some estates have a central metering point. Another estate has individual units metered independently. So they have hundreds of thousands of meters inside the estate. The cumulative bill, even if they consume the same amount of kilowatt hours, will not be the same. For a point load or a skipper meter or any of those maximum demand billing, there's a different way of calculating that bill. It has something to do with your peak consumption. I'm going to look at that as part of this class. Compared to the one that does not have anything to do with your peak. It's just what you consume that you get as your bill. The FM needs to understand how energy is purchased. Every FM needs to be able to put together data on how much it costs them to produce a quantity, a unit quantity of energy from multiple sources, including solar, for example. Then your facilities, your equipment, your building may be helping you to waste some of the energy you are creating or generating. If a space cools So the temperature set on the thermostat. The compressor can rest, and for that period, you can save on your energy. If the building is so porous that the temperature is not easily reached, the compressor will keep working forever. So thinking about your building systems, your building fabric and structure, as well as your HVAC system, that's your heating, ventilation, air conditioning system, electrical system, and all the other systems you have in your building will go a long way in understanding and implementing energy efficiency in your facilities. People are the ones that use the energy. You may not be able to monitor everybody in how they use energy, but carrying them along your energy efficiency initiative will give you a very, very good chance of success. So you don't get to be working in one end and somebody's working against you in the other end, right? And then ensure that you have meters at various levels. Energy costs can be very deceptive. We know it's very needed. We know it's something that you must always have on ground before a place can be functional. But every time you save cost on energy, it goes directly to your profit of that organization. Every time it goes directly to the profit of the organization. So if you think of it as an iceberg, it's there in the ocean. What you see is what's on the top. You probably think, oh, let's just go and push it aside with our boats, for example, only to meet a very steep resistance because more than 9/10 of its weight on size is buried underwater. When you run an entire facility and you're not careful to be transparent in all the line items, that's how it's going to look. It will look almost like you're not spending much. You're not having data to back up your continuous spending. So you can put it in perspective. Because every time you do any savings, it goes directly to your profits. And that can only happen if you have visibility to all the line items. Without tracking, without recording, without measuring, you will not be able to save. Perform energy audits of your facilities. What kind of lighting do you have? Lighting is a very significant cost when it comes to energy consumption, especially in commercial buildings and offices, because they are almost always left on. They generate a lot of heat, and that heat is now compensated for by the air conditioning, which has to work even harder to cool the space. So if you ignore your lights and you think you have inverter ACs all over the place and your air conditioning is not very efficient, your building fabric is very efficient, you might be making a mistake. What kind of lighting can give you the light intensity you require and the least heat? Talk about your building fabric being porous, windows with gaps, not well insulated. Your air conditioning system themselves can be a major consumer. You have noise, heat being generated from within the system. Then you have other equipment. To audit your facility, you must be able to document the load rating or capacity of every equipment. Be able to inspect all your building fabric and structure and see where the building might be leaking out energy from cooling. If you're in temperate environment, energy from heating. And then identify all of those retrofits that need to take place. repairs to the building, replacement to light fittings and changing of light systems, metering and sub-metering to various levels and layers in your facility, so you can know exactly where every kilowatt hour of energy is going into. Energy audit seeks to document things that are sometimes ignored in the organization, such as the energy being used on site per year, which facilities or buildings use the most energy, and the opportunities for savings. At this, you can actually do your audit to a detailed level where you can tell how each equipment, each space is consuming energy in your facility. And you can make decisions about whether to relocate or not, whether to, what kind of systems you need to acquire, what kind of work process you need to put in place, just because you have metered your energy consumption to such granular level where you now have a clear understanding of what's happening in your facility. The audits will give you, ideas as to what maintenance adjustments that you need to put in place to save energy, short-term low-cost energy efficiency retrofit recommendation, what you can replace, what you can repair, action plans for energy efficiency capital investment, what kind of investment you can, there are some things you want to do in your facility, and you probably will get in a resistance. We don't have money for this. This is not going to make a lot of sense, and so on and so forth. If you can tie those into how much energy you're going to save and how much that energy is going to cost, you probably will get a speedy a response or approval. Okay, comfort and code issues that can be addressed immediately, and opportunities for better adherence to lighting and comfort standards. The energy audit is something that you can buy as a service. We have engineers in our team that will come do an investigation of your facilities and give you not just your energy consumption load profile, but also an audit of your building, so you can get a sense of where your energy is being lost, opportunities for saving, and take action that will help you to actually save energy. So I talked about how your metering system works. For those of us who have those maximum demand metering arrangements, we need to learn a thing or two from this particular slide. Your peak is used to factor into your overall consumption. So if you start during the day at 100 kilowatts, as you're building up, at a certain point during the afternoon when everybody are in the office, everything is running, you have probably 250 kilowatts, and you know that's your peak because you've been metering your aggregate load. And it begins to drop down to 100 kilowatts and maybe 60 kilowatts at night when the building is fully shut down, security lights and servers, for example. That gives you what your load profile is, right? If you are on point load, or you have your own transformer like we have many of the facilities here have, your peak will be used as a factor. So instead of just billing you for 100 kilowatts and then 150 and then 130 and then 300 and then back to 150 and down to 100 again and 60 at night, 300, which is your peak, will be factored throughout your 24 hours profile. There'll be a share of that peak that will be applied again to all the time you have power running in the facility. So you want to reduce your peak consumption through two strategies. Load shedding is when you actually cut off from doing certain things. You are not moving them anyway. You just say, at this time, we're not going to have power running for this. For example, some organizations actually ask employees to leave the office during break time. 12 o'clock, they shut down air conditioning, they shut down the whole thing, leave it only on emergency lighting for 1 hour or 1.5 hours, depending on how long the break is. If you don't want to leave, no problem, but not allowing those loads to run at that time helps to drop your peak and shed the load, which is drastically going to help you save on energy. But you could also deploy load shifting, where you take out certain load items that are supposed to be running most of the time because of automation, and you now schedule them to happen outside peak periods. For example, your facility is loaded and people are busy working in the afternoon, and because you've set your water pumping system to always refill or top up when it drops below 40%, for example, top up again when it drops below 40%, that's what it keeps doing during the day. During your peak, your water pump will be pumping. Your sewage plant is also set to automatic. If the receptacle fills to a certain percentage, the pumping system should start within there and processing should start happening, right? Now, your peak is now increased by those other systems that have been put on automatic. Instead, put them on a different type of automatic, which is a scheduled running time. If I know how much water I need during the day, for example, I can set my pumping systems to run 7 in the morning and run again 7 in the evening. Make sure you fill up, trip off, and wait for 12 hours to fill up, to start filling up again. That way I have moved my pumping completely from peak time to off peak as a strategy to reduce my load. This is what we call load shifting. Don't forget the smaller things that happens within your electrical systems. Of course, we talked about the building system and the building fabric, but then there are small things that we can ignore. For example, having undersized conductors used to install equipment. I'm talking of cable sizing. If you use small cables, they start heating up and cooling down and heating up and cooling down. You're actually using up a lot more energy. Poor connections, including those dirty connections from twisting cables and even tape around them. And then leaking insulation when they are cracked in your insulation. And then low power factor and voltage imbalances where you have too much on one phase compared to another phase in your facility, as well as the micro items, leaving laptops always connected, putting chargers on the wall and leaving them always running even when they are not charging. All of these things add up, ladies and gentlemen, they all add up. And your ability to fish them out, isolate them, and stop them from adding to your bill will go a long way. You may think these efforts will be in vain. It will not be in vain because you are not only trying to save money, you are also trying to save the environment and be sustainable in your operation. And then in today's world of sensors and Internet of Things connections, for very little amount, you can have your entire facility, connected with data loggers and data, systems and controllers that can feed you information remotely. You can even do controls and automation in your facilities now with cheaper systems, not the expensive building management systems that we used to have. Because you can actually have the information real time in a phone or a laptop that will give you information and it can help you take action that can help you fix things in your facility. So why do you want to have a single meter in your facility? Why can't you set up an energy management system that can help you, break down exactly how energy is being consumed across the various spaces, the various equipment that you have installed? This we call submission, but we call it an energy management system. An example of an energy management system is the Enniscope. The Enniscope, which Max-Migold deploys, helps you to set up a series of meters at the point of use in a distribution board or in a consumer unit where you have multiple circuits terminated in fuses inside that panel or distribution board. You have an Enniscope device installed beside it, and connected to each of those circuits, not intrusively. It's just hanging around each of them, similar to what we see here in this image, right? So this is just hanging around cables, not connected straight into the cables are not connected straight into the meter. It collects data on the flow of current and other parameters of electricity or energy running through these cables. Well, that's our lesson for today. I would like to get your questions and then let's have a discussion. But I have questions. Many people have been promoted because of energy efficiency. Many have lost their jobs because they couldn't control costs for energy efficiency. And management also feels a sense of maturity of you as a professional when you talk with more focus on sustainability. Francis, let's hear from you.
Thank you, sir, for the lectures. I just want to ask if this device that you just showed us in the last, I think the last slide, that is being deployed by Max-Migold. Am I right?
Yes.
That the device
Yes.
is okay. Does it contradict any law? You know, our PHCM people, they like to come and check your meters because all meters are almost outside now.
Yes.
They don't think, is Max-Migold doing anything to make sure they are aware that these are technologies used to generate data for facility managers, just to analyze their management of energy, so that
Don't
you don't do it and they come
deploy,
and arrest you.
No, don't deploy anything that intrudes into their installations. If you have your cables and you hang things around your cables to read data for you, it does not have any intrusion or any contravention of the contracts you have with them. That's what you need to understand.
I'm saying they may not know. Are they aware? Is there any sensitization that Max-Migold has done?
You see it everywhere. Okay. It had no business with them. That's what I'm saying. Okay. It had no business with them at all.
Okay.
At all.
All right, sir. And if anyone wants to deploy these devices, Max-Migold will do that.
Oh yes. We have an energy department, definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Let's get the next question. Anthony, you can take the mic now.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, I just want to know because the facility I'm managing now, actually I joined them last year, but I noticed that they have a single meter, which a single meter, and they just bring, normally NEPA just bring the bills on a monthly basis, and we try to see if there's any way we can get a kind of for each of those buildings. So we contacted NEPA and they told us that because of transformer we are using, it is not possible for them to issue us a they can give us a check meter. I want to know what is because now it's difficult for us to read what each apartment uses. I just want to know what I can do as the facility manager to at least be able to, read each buildings, because we have a terrace building, 30 units of it. I want to know what I can do to be able to, read each building, and what help can Max-Migold give, an idea of what I can do just to make this thing achievable, sir.
Very good. If you go to energy.maxmigold.com, you'll find a lot of information. Energy.maxmigold.com. You get a lot of information on our energy solution, right? Just go through it and send an email. We'll get someone to come and do a survey for you, and they will give you some kind of ideas on what you can do. But your problem right now, what you just mentioned, is a very simple one, right? The very simple one. All of those units that you want to get to monitor their consumption, they are all supplied from one panel, isn't it?
Exactly.
Exactly. So if they're all supplied from one panel, now you see the Eniscope. You see the Eniscope image. I'm sharing the screen with you.
Hello, I didn't get that, sir.
Are you seeing my screen, guys?
I can see your screen. Yeah, I can see it, sir.
Exactly. You see this small device I'm looking at here, this Eniscope, right?
Yeah. Yes.
This thing can meter 8 3-phase connections or 24 single-phase connections.
Okay.
So we will just put this very device beside your panel, and then if it is 3-phase lines that go into each unit, this one will capture 8 of them.
8 units, okay.
If it is single phase, 2 cables that go into each unit, this one will capture 24 of them.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? So, and then the interface is like it's a computer dashboard similar to this one you are seeing on the screen now. I can see it on my phone. I can see it on a laptop. So the meter is not going to be the kind of physical meter that you go and look inside and start taking a reading, right? It is going to meter and bring it to you in the cloud, into the internet. So you can log into it from any device at any time, and you will see not only the aggregate. Sometimes it's a problem waiting to the end of the month to know who has consumed what, right? But this one can tell you real time, now, who is consuming what this very minute.
Okay.
So that even when you go home and you come back in the morning, what ran during the night, you can tell, because every item is being metered, and all of this is done without even connecting to your electrical system. It's just current transformers, small CTs that are hung around the cables to gather all this data for you. You understand? So it's a very cheap approach to metering and gives you data that you can use to validate. Now, the other side is because you are on maximum demand metering, the actual consumption of each of those units will not add up to what your bill will be. Your bill is being factored with peak, right? Your bill is being manipulated automatically using your peak load. You get?
Exactly.
So, but it will give you a sense of how to ratio or divide that bill while you begin to work on how to reduce your peak. You can now begin to talk to your residents and owners on how to certain times during the day. Once you identify what your peak is, what we're going to do for you is going to help you identify your peak, right? So you know the hours that you must cut off certain things that mustn't be running at that time. Okay?
Okay.
Jibril.
Sir, good evening.
Good evening.
How are you? Fine, thank you, sir. I came in late, but I was able to pick some things. And I wanted to ask you with respect to some of the solutions you've just given us. I have two sites which I manage for some clients. The first site, I have this issue. They have meter for generator and they have meter for public electricity.
For each unit?
Yes, for each unit. But at every point in time, there's power surge. And they can call today, can say the meter, the pumping machine blew, something burnt, and the stairwell light. So I'm wondering how mitigate against such surge, because they don't, sometimes they don't go into the apartment, they go to the common services, borehole, pumping machine, stairwell light, even sometimes some other things. That's the first question. Then my other location, we get fixed bill, like you said. It's a multi-story building of about 24 flats, is in Mikoyi. But now they based our metering because all the apartments in the building has hot plate electric cookers. So they just base it that the reason why our bill is high is because all of you have hot plates. And that means automatically you consume more power. And sometimes the occupancy rate of the building sometimes is not up to 50%, but they will still bring that bill.
Are they reading the meter or are they just estimating?
They don't estimate, they just give you figures. They don't look at the bill and say, it's a story building, they have hot plates, bam.
Okay, please stop. By law, yes, they should not even be collecting money from you. All commercial installations, point loads that have not been installed with a meter, they have no right to even bill you at all right now.
To give us fixed bill.
They are not going to collect money from you at all again. They're going to give you free lights now as we speak, because it is 2019. They were forced to install meters for all of those commercial consumers. So if they don't read your meter, they should not give you a bill. And then for the residential consumers, the law actually said, if you do not give them a meter, don't bill them above 5,000 naira for this band. I think 10,000 for another band. They created certain bands that were reasonable. That if the authority, DISCO, believe that you are consuming more, they should come and install a meter for you. And they have been doing that. I've seen a whole street in Yaba here where they will just come one day and force meters on all the houses. You understand? No asking
I've been
for
trying
money.
to get meter for a commercial residential building in the last 6 months. It's not been working.
It's an aberration while you are the one looking for meter. It shouldn't be you looking for meter. It is them that should be bringing meters to you. Now, if in the meantime you are having these issues, getting meters and estimated billing, you know what you start doing? Come, let's install a meter for you. It will not intrude into what they're having. It will just be logging your consumption. When they come and give you that outrageous bill, show them what your data is showing, and the matter will be laid to rest very quickly. They know they are ripping you off, and you are doing nothing about it. I lived in an estate in Ebute Meta here once where they said they kept using that estimated system until, well, everybody paid for meters. They refused to install meters for each of their apartments. They kept using that central estimated system, bring a bill, 800,000, 1 million. And then when money had value, you know what? we now forced our way out of them. We said, if you don't meter us, we're not using your public supply again. We stayed on generator for 6 months just to prove a point.
Wow.
During that period, Jen will come on by, I think it was 7 in the evening to 12, and 5 in the morning to 7. So it was carefully managed. Within 6 months, meters arrived from nowhere. So because they enjoy that whole process of estimated and you pay whatever they send you. So please, whatever you can do to break that cycle, please. And then all the bills you have been paying for all these months when there was no meter, keep it to, you may have a case for refund though.
Good. That would be good. Then the other matter of the surge.
Yeah, the surge. First of all, check your earthing. Do earth resistivity testing. Our energy team can also do that. Do an electrical audit of the building. Your earthing might be the first culprit. Most people build and forget that the earth pit is somewhere in the building and never have a maintenance program for their earth. So they start suffering all of these surges and the rest. And then if you've taken care of your earthing issues, do portable appliance testing. Sometimes your electrical system is not being affected by things coming from outside. It's being affected by things coming from inside. When you have loads, where the load itself is faulty, you won't believe, just today, my air conditioning in my office, where I'm training from right now, I started malfunctioning. So I called the technician to come and check on it. I thought it was just a small thing, just service it and clean up, so it starts cooling. He now realized that the connection, the earth, neutral, and live connections were not done properly when the installer installed it. And for 8-9 months, this AC worked. You know what's been happening during that period? The air conditioner has been dragging a lot of current and creating issues for the building. Because sometimes my meter circuit breaker inside the meter will just trip off when no extra load was added. It is this AC that was causing the problem. So doing a test on all your plug-in loads, all your load points will help to identify which of your equipment is causing problem for your system, right? And then the third thing is your lightning. You know, if you don't have a lightning arrestor, that's if you observe that this happens more during rain or rainy season, then you may have to do a lightning spike, wire it down, and have its own earth pits. And have several earth pits in your facility. If it is coming from public supply, maybe there's phase reversal or surges, voltage surges.
Yes, sir.
That's causing problem for you. Then you might have to have a correcting device. There's a power correcting device, surge protector device that can be used centrally. So if your facility is a 100 kilowatts facility, you buy a power correcting device that is 100 kilowatts rated, almost like a stabilizer for the entire building. Yeah. Those are the 4 options I can think of right now, but an investigation needs to happen first, starting with earth resistivity testing, and then all the way down
arrestor.
Monitoring what kind of voltage you are getting, because many of us don't know that power suppliers are better off when your voltage is very high, because what they bill you for will be higher if your voltage is very high. You don't need high voltage. But high voltage destroys your equipment and pays them more because it increases your bill. So let's be careful. If you don't have a means of tracking and monitoring them, you might suffer unnecessarily. All right, Bianana, your question.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Just want to share my experience on an attempt to do lighting improvement and energy management.
Very good.
I noticed that in in the control rooms and certain areas of my facility where I'm managing, we have old fluorescent tubes that sometimes was giving us so much maintenance costs, because each time we have our own gas turbine. In fact, just to let you know that the facility I'm managing had particularly ran from inception over 30 years on independent power. That's a gas turbine. All right, so we noticed that each time there is a need for maintenance on the gas turbine and we switch to the generating standby generators, we lose a lot of this lighting because of power source issues too. And besides too, we noticed that the lighting at some point was not very bright as the screens were getting dull and all that. And we decided to come with an initiative, which initially was highly resisted because we have an electrical department, which is independent of the facility maintenance unit.
Yes.
So they came with so much resistance to say, no, you must, whatever you are installed must be as built. And we say, no, we cannot live in this in the past. There are LED systems that are durable and energy efficient. So the argument went back and forward. So I spoke with one of the vendors, and he volunteered to give us one of the lighting for a demonstration. So what we did, we installed at the control where they usually will have a brief meeting, a stand-up meeting. And that we stayed there for almost a year. And each time we had all those fluctuations and everything, the light was still intact. And gradually everybody said, okay, let's do it. So eventually we got the approval and we were able to install them. They were still reluctant, and somebody said, let's do about a quarter of the amount. So my MD was on a visit with some of investors, and when he saw it, I said, this is very nice. This is what I saw abroad. Can we flood this place with this kind of lighting?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. And gradually that project is ongoing. But at some point there was a challenge, and it also brings me, like you said, equity and viability of whatever you are doing. I noticed that for some persons, the lighting became too bright. It became too bright for some persons, though a few persons, but I think it's worth noting. It's worth noting. So I know in a particular office, I had to reduce the number of lights that we install in that particular office.
Yes.
I think that brings me to the fact that, like you said, there should be some indices to back whatever we are doing.
So what you mean, right, was that you did not take the baseline light intensity reading for every phase. You understand? You have to take that baseline light intensity reading for every phase and then use that to create your new design for what you are going to install. Now, another approach for some organizations is they will now change their light switches to a dimmer system. You know that light switches, the normal on and off, and the ones that use a dimming control, they are not too much different when you talk about high quality switches between the dimming ones and the off and on ones for the high grade. The difference is not very much. You understand? So you could have used that as part of the scoping. Get the LED lights that accept dimming, right? And then use dimmer switches to replace them. In fact, if you wanted to deepen your design of such a system, you will introduce something like a light intensity regulator that will increase or reduce light according to the number of people in a particular space. Which means there will be other sensors that will be tied to the lighting system that will be feeding information into that switching system to dim and control lights to respond to the number of people in the space and activities going on in the space. But of course, that's a fantastic effort, a good one you have scored there on the area of sustainability. What now needs to happen is that you need to have on record baseline energy consumption for the lights that were there before and the improved energy consumption or the amount reduced, so you can actually show value of this project. Because we often do some of these projects and get lost when it comes to accounting for, the real value. The real value here is that we saved so much. You need to be able to come back and say, what is the payback period for this investment that we have done from the savings on energy consumed in this new LED?
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, that was fantastic. Francis, last question, go ahead.
Yeah, sir, so a friend is building a 10 unit of 5-bedroom. And I was discussing with him that I may want to take up the facility management. So we're having an argument on how is generator going to come. So I want to know, is it supposed to, as a developer, does it make sense for him to buy generator because he's going to sell all the units, all the property, and cost it on each of the buildings? Or okay, sir.
Now, if he's going to sell off everything, right? If he buys the generator and installs, he will attract a premium selling price.
Okay.
Isn't it? Because the generator cost is going to be shared into the amount he's going to use to sell each of the units.
Yes.
Now, if he does that, the new owners will now decide on how they will keep replacing the gen when it wears out. That becomes a contribution of the FM company that takes it over. If the FM company is not smart enough to have an asset replacement funding, what we call a sinking fund in some circles, right? So that all owners are contributing to that fund, they will make a big mistake. What most people are doing right now that is causing the infrastructure decay in many of these estates and issues later is that you are trying to save from service charge for asset replacement. That is wrong. A tenant does not pay for asset replacements. A tenant pays for his own service charge, what he is consuming while he is there. The rent he has paid is for renting the assets that are in place. So that tenant money that goes to the landlord automatically makes the landlord liable for asset replacement funding or future sinking fund savings. Okay, so that is something that needs to be looked at. For some developers, they don't want to get involved in all of those brand. You know what they'll just do? They will just build it and say, this is generator space where all of you can come and put your generator. Buy your generator as you like and come and put it there to simplify the whole process. And he sells the unit and it's off and leaves it for you as the FM, right? So if he wants to do that, leave it for him to do that, because the complication of having a central generator system is a lot of work. That would be if he's intending to stay on ground as the FM employing you. If he wants to hand you over to the new owners to be the one employing you, then it's best for him to just segregate all the power, share all the spaces and say, put your gen in that area.
There is no space. There is no enough space for that. So it's going to be a central generating unit. So I'm thinking in my head, will he even get, is he even supposed to get two for substitution purpose? Of course, in case one breaks down.
Even if we get two, they will both die one day, even two replacing.
And no, so this idea of the asset replacement funding must come up. As a facility manager, you must call all the landlord and tell them about funding. So that means you have to create an account separate for it.
Yes. Yes.
And it will be managed. That means, could that be part of the maintenance fund? Should we put it? No, it can't be.
Oh, that's what I was just thinking. It's not part of service charge. Maintenance program is different from capital asset replacement. That money will have to be managed by a committee of the owners.
Okay, so it won't be in the account of the facility management.
They will draw money from there to give you to spend. You want to replace the gen tomorrow, they'll draw money from there to give you to spend.
Okay, so it's just for me to advise them, they create an account by themselves, but there has to be that account for major equipment, not only generator, I'm sure.
Yes, all the major equipment. Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I get it now. So I will advise him properly. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic. You're welcome. Tafik.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, I just want to ask, what energy load shedding and load shifting, which one saves energy most?
Come again.
Load shedding and load shifting, which one saves energy the most?
Load shedding means you cancel that spending. That load is never used again. Load shifting means you've transferred it from your peak. So load shedding will save you more because you cancel the activity altogether.
Okay. Thanks so much.
That's load shedding.
Okay.
All right. I have Francis, your hand is up again. Okay. Go ahead. Oh, that was from the last one.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, great. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good evening. I hope I see you again in the next class. I'll look at the schedule and see whether I'm the one teaching the next class, okay?
All right, good evening.